Hello, Mr. Song. It's good to have you here. I'm Vlad, and you're doing the Crypto Insider interview.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to do these things. I hear you're in Romania, so I love that the internet allows for us to do interviews like this, like from across the world and stuff.
Oh, you have no idea what it's like to be a second-class citizen of the world, yet have this. It's I who's saying it, so I guess it's fine. But to be a second-class citizen of the world and have this privilege to just interact with people with whom otherwise you'd have no connection. And that's why I
Mm,
guess I was I came late to the party of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. It's not that I haven't heard of them, but they didn't
mm,
become popular in here until very late. Even
mm.
though we have some whales, as far as I heard, there's somebody who owns like 40,
I
400,000 Bitcoin.
I believe Mircea Popescu is Romanian, so yeah,
Yes, he is.
he's the one Romanian Bitcoiner I know
Yeah, he's quite famous.
of. It's great.
So I should be asking you questions, and I'm
Yeah,
going
that
to
might be a good
start
idea.
with the recent news, and I'm not going to go with the controversial one first and choose the one about the Liquid network.
Mm.
What do you think about it? I wrote an article and I asked for the opinion of Samson Mao. He seemed to be
Mm.
very positive and even said that it can decongest the main blockchain.
Mm.
And what do you think about it as an invention? Do you think it's maybe too centralized or it can harm the reputation of Bitcoin? Or do you have any criticism at all?
I mean, my opinion is that it's a good first step towards sidechains, and the model that they have is a federated trust model. So I think a supermajority of the participants need to sign off before transactions go through. So I think it's if I'm not if I'm remembering correctly, they have 23, and you need a supermajority or 1+2/3, something like that. So that ends up being what let's see, that's 16, 17 out of those 23, something like that. 16 or 17 out of those 23 need to agree before any transactions go through. But generally, if it's signed by people, then it can go through fairly quickly because it's a trusted sort of closed wall garden. I think it's a very good idea to provide liquidity between exchanges. We saw, for example, last year that there was a significant premium in Korea for significant chunks of time. And that was because there wasn't liquidity back and forth. Now, most of that liquidity isn't there because of the fiat money not being able to flow out. So there are capital controls in Korea and things like that that make it very difficult. But when you have at least the Bitcoin liquidity, you can settle a little bit faster. And people were trying to arbitrage between things. People were bringing like suitcases of money to Hong Kong just so they can go get more Bitcoin. Bring more Bitcoins into Korea and stuff like that. This mitigates that a lot, and makes a lot of the Bitcoin transfers a lot faster. Not even like 30 minutes or something like that. It's almost instant with the side chain. A lot of that Bitcoin network activity is actually on chain. That's on chain is often between exchanges from people that are looking to arbitrage. So having this will definitely help a lot in mitigating some of that because a lot of that volume is taken now to Liquid network. As soon as you know that the other address is from somebody that's a participant, then you can transfer instantly almost instead of waiting, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. You can close these gaps very, very quickly. Eventually, I imagine this will become sort of like a second layer network that's more commercial, and I think that's a good thing. I like competition. I like innovation. I like when new things are tried out. So, I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. It's called Liquid for a reason, and it provides liquidity to everybody, and it should sort of even out the prices between all of these, and any participant in this network that doesn't have the same price as everybody else is actually more reflective of the fiat money in that country than anywhere else. So I think it'll be a good thing. I look forward to it, to watching it work.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I agree with you on many points. But what about that tweet which became controversial about spending with your credit card and then paying out in Bitcoin? Or could you
Mhm.
please explain it? Because I saw that some people reacted in maybe bitter ways, like Jackson Palmer, who said, "Oh, that's a great way of providing a new form of money and innovation to the world." Whereas people like
Mhm.
Tone Vase seem to be much more defensive and explain through
Mhm.
an article which I haven't read yet, but he said that
Mhm.
he presented a similar argument 4 years ago in a debate.
Mhm. Yeah. So my point was, this is the economically rational and more convenient thing to do, right? I didn't say this is my recommendation or anything, but if you want to do that, this is the economically rational and convenient thing to do. I don't think there's any disputing that credit cards are way more convenient, other than, darknet markets, international remittances, maybe micropayments. With a few exceptions, credit cards are way more convenient, right? More merchants take them. So it's a lot easier to use credit cards to buy what you want. And my point was, if you use a credit card, then it's economically rational because you get points back. You don't have to pay the bill for 25 to 55 days after your purchase. Uh, you get consumer protections in the form of chargebacks. There's a whole host of benefits to using a credit card, even though the prices are the same. So really, you're getting a discount for utilizing a credit card versus using a Bitcoin. Why would you pay more to be able to use Bitcoin? Economically, it does not make rational sense. But a lot of people took that to mean, oh, you're just like pro Visa or something like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it's the economically rational thing to do. It is the more convenient thing to do. And if you want to use it as a method of payment, then just pay off your credit card bill when it comes. That way, you get like 25 to 55 days of upside, which in Bitcoin terms can actually mean a significant difference. You might be getting, you can double up on all of the savings. You might be getting like 3-4% savings off of using a credit card, and then you can, in addition to that, get like 10 or 20% upside on like Bitcoin appreciation during the 25 to 55 days. So economically, it makes much more sense to use a credit card to do it that way. That was my argument, right? Like it's economically rational, it's more convenient. But what people took that to mean was, okay, well, Jimmy is like anti, spending or something like that. I mean, I didn't really understand their argument, because they were just sort of saying, oh, like just kind of the shriek and point tactics of a mob that doesn't like what you say, but doesn't really have an argument against it. So, especially like Jackson or whoever, like that guy's like he's an admitted socialist. He doesn't really understand economics whatsoever. So, to me, his criticism is a badge of honor, and I really hope that he continues to criticize me, because for me, I do not want to be on the same side of him on any economic issue, because I don't think he understands economics at all. I have an article that that explores this significantly further, including why they were so angry about it. I mean, at one point, this was like the 5, 6, 7, 8 posts on RBTC. And you have to wonder, why are they so against doing what's individually economically rational? Why are they like that? So you'll have to wait for my article to come out, but well, it'll come out next week.
I will definitely read it.
Mm,
But let's talk about your work as an educator.
mm,
I remember reading back at Consensus in May that you
mm,
had a workshop, a seminar with Elizabeth Stark, and you helped educate a lot of people and get them introduced to programming Bitcoin.
mhm.
And is this what you like to do best? Or would you say that you'd rather write BIPs and contribute to the governance or the functioning of Bitcoin? Because I remember there's this Woody Allen quote, and I'm not going to be mean, but that's what he said, that those who cannot do, they teach.
and those who, yeah, those who do, yeah, yeah. I get that idea. So first of all, it's a 2-day seminar. I've been running them all over the world. I will be hitting my 5th continent this year in December when I head off to Australia. But I've done a bunch of them in North America, in Europe, in South America, in Asia. And there's a lot of demand for learning all about Bitcoin, and that's what my seminar does. It's a 2-day seminar. Elizabeth Stark was helping with getting some scholarships funded so that I could teach developers that maybe can't afford my course. But I've been doing this for over a year now. I've taught over 400 people. And they get to learn a lot of the real nitty gritty of Bitcoin and what it's all about. Now, why am I doing that versus maybe like contributing directly? Well, I realized about a year and a half ago that I could probably be a developer for the core repository and other open source projects, and I could probably do it in a way where I could do like 50 commits a year or something like that. But I realized very quickly that you need a lot more developers than just a few. And one of the big lacks in the space was people that actually understood the material, that were willing to teach it and could do it in a way that people can understand it. And I've been, doing some form of teaching, not too often, but enough that I knew I could potentially do something like that. And I quit, my corporate job, I think middle of last year. And I started to do this, and I've done like 23 editions of my seminar in the past year and a few months. And by doing that, I've been able to train over 400 people. And the idea is, if even like 1 out of 8 of those guys, the people that I've trained does like 1 commit a year, I still come out ahead. And that's the idea, is that I want to train the next generation of developers. And I really mean next generation. I've taught people as young as 14, and like a lot of college, all the way up to people in their 70s. It's a lot of different people, and I'm always surprised and pleasantly so about the people that I'm getting to teach. And that's my mission, is to make Bitcoin stronger by creating more developers.
So speaking about teenage people, the ones that you teach, and let's say that you're 18 right now and you just went to a seminar and you've learned about Bitcoin. Would you actually work on Bitcoin or look for something else which you would consider to be the next generation of blockchain innovations or whatever? And try to answer this as if you're an 18-year-old and
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know as much as you do right now from experience, or you didn't know anything at all about economics. Do you think it's more attractive to work on different projects like EOS or whatever?
Well, I think EOS is a scam, and I don't think you should work on it. But at the end of towards the end of the seminar, I have a whole lecture on like sort of next steps that you can take after the seminar, and ways to figure out, where to take your career or journey or, path in Bitcoin. Generally, I recommend that people, start by contributing to open source projects and learning as much as possible. Because, developers that know this stuff are incredibly rare, and they become, sort of desirable in the marketplace anyway. So it isn't that difficult to find somebody that will hire you. And in fact, a lot of these ICO projects and stuff like that, they're flush with money but don't have any developers. So oftentimes they will come and offer a lot of these people a lot of money. But like my recommendation is generally, look at what it is that you really want to do and make sure that you're going towards it. Because working for something like EOS, I don't think is a very good idea, because I think it'll die in a horrible dumpster fire in the next 5 years. doing something for an ICO, that's not going to last either. You're not going to have anything that's good on your, that's going to look good on your record by joining a lot of this stuff. I think most people will do fine, trying to learn and getting better and seeing what market opportunities there are. It might involve, getting an entry level job at certain, Bitcoin related companies, or, like it might be, creating a new open source project. Really depends on the person and what they're passionate about and what their goals are. But based on that, I have made recommendations, and I have students that work at almost every major Bitcoin company around the world. So it's really up to what you want to achieve, and it's very tailored towards the talents that particular individual possesses. So, it takes some introspection. It takes some, knowing yourself in order to get there. But that's the journey that I hope they go on in order to really contribute.
Okay, you still haven't answered my question in the sense that you didn't say what you do yourself.
Oh, what I would do myself? I would probably start by contributing to open source, right? Like, I mean, not necessarily to Bitcoin Core. That's a little bit intimidating, though, not quite as intimidating as people think. There are people like Andrew Chow and Matt Corallo that started as 16, 17, 18-year-olds contributing to Bitcoin Core. So it can be done. But it takes some amount of, self-discipline and knowing about how everything works, and really just gaining some experience, and that takes time. So, I mean, I hope that, if I were an 18-year-old right now, I would definitely be in this space. I would not go towards EOS or an ICO or some of these other projects. I would almost certainly stick with Bitcoin and figure out what's a solid way I can contribute in an open source way, possibly working for a company. The nice thing about being young is that the world's your oyster, right? Like, there's a lot of opportunity. The hard part about being young is making some choices, and that requires some deep reflection about who you are and what you care about. And that's not entirely obvious as an 18-year-old. So that's probably what I would spend time figuring out first.
Right. I actually have this long list of questions, and I guess right now I'm breaking the fourth wall. But a lot of people want me to ask you, and they specifically put it as Bcash. So what do you think about Bcash? What do you think about ERC20 tokens? How do you feel about Ethereum? And I actually wanted to ask you about SegWit2x and what you think about it in hindsight a year later, because you're the one who discovered two major flaws in the code.
Well, I didn't discover it. I just wrote about it and explained it to people. There were other people that found it before me. It's just, they didn't want to do the write-up and everything. So I went through the code, and I got some hints from various developers, and I tried to explain it as best as I could. But let me go through all of those. BCH has no reason to exist. I wrote an article called Bitcoin Cash is a Fiat Money. Please go read that if you want to see all of my arguments on why I think Bitcoin Cash is worthless, or it really doesn't have any value to anybody. There's as far as ERC20 tokens, I think it's using the wrong tool for the job. If you are actually creating some sort of utility token for some sort of distributed service, then that's the wrong tool, because most of the time it's a centralized entity trying to capture decentralized value. It doesn't make any sense. Most of the time, these people are just trying to print their own money and make money off of it. We have a word for that here. That's called a scam. So I don't see those things as worth anything. Ethereum, I think, is a platform for these scams, and that's more or less their killer feature. I don't think it's technologically very interesting. Most of the features that they have done are done in a very amateurish way. I mean, like adding Turing completeness, that was it's not used by anybody. It's stupid. And the other one was SegWit2x. I thought that was corporate governance takeover attempt. I thought it was a way in which they tried to influence what was going on in Bitcoin by saying, okay, well, we're the businesses, and therefore we can set the direction. Did I lose you?
Yeah, sorry. I have no idea what happened, but is it still recording? Wait,
It says it's
it is.
recording.
So you are at the part with Segwit 2x, sorry. And you said it
Yeah,
was
so
a corporate takeover?
yeah, it was a corporate takeover attempt. It's that the users rejected the corporate takeover attempt, and I think that was a really good thing, and one of the reasons why it went up in price so much right afterwards. It's that the corporate attempt didn't succeed, and that proved Bitcoin's anti-fragility. You can't, no, like that scarcity of Bitcoin was proven to be sacred, and that's really good.
I think also people were expecting the fork to happen and they would think, oh, if I buy Bitcoin right now, I can get 2 coins from the
Well,
fork.
that would have been before, but afterwards, it's
Afterwards,
still
yeah, I agree.
right. Yeah, right. So, oh wow, has it been almost a year already? That's kind
Yeah,
of crazy.
it was in
Yeah.
November, I think.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I remember at the time I was reading so many sources, and I don't think I had a compass for
Mm.
whom to look to. And I was reading all the sources, and I ended up on bitcoin.com, and they were like, no, the old Bitcoin is going to be taken over by banks and whatever. They had these conspiracy theories. And it was so hard for somebody who wasn't maybe well versed with how the industry works and who the people are and what their interests are and how what they have lobbied for years. Because, for example, Eric Voorhees, he's a hero in the film Banking on Bitcoin, but otherwise he tried to support as hard as he could the Segwit 2x project,
Hmm.
and he was maybe the most vocal advocate. But I think I have a question right now. Do you think that Bitcoin Cash would have been as successful if Segwit 2x also happened?
And that's a great question. I don't know. I don't see it as that successful. You look at a price at the price a year ago. I think it's the same price. And actually, the futures contract right before Bitcoin Cash forked, which was I think late July of 2017, was about $400-$500. And it's still $400-$500. So it hasn't really been successful per se. I guess it's tread water, and that is mostly due to Bitmain going like mostly like buying $1 billion worth of Bitcoin Cash. It doesn't. I wouldn't say it's been very successful in any way, shape, or form. It's been propped up by a lot of people, but as far as the actual price and everything else, it's done horribly. So I don't know. I don't understand how you could really call it a success in that regard. Now,
Well, it could have
what would have
been
happened?
worse, like Bitcoin
Yeah,
Gold
it
or
could.
Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Unlimited, or whatever.
Yeah. There's 74 different hard forks, right? But I had 2x happened. I guess that community would have been split a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd be that different. There would still be Roger Ver like telling all of us that we're doing something stupid or something like that. But regardless, I don't think it was really in any way successful, and I don't think 2x would have been successful. It would have it would have been a complete PR disaster. I doubt any of like people were distancing themselves even like a couple of weeks before. So to me, it doesn't, it's, yeah, it's kind of like a reality that doesn't like never would have come into practice anyway.
About Roger Ver, because you're the one who mentioned him. I remember I saw that failed debate attempt or
Uh-huh.
whatever when
Mhm.
you are just upset that he had a microphone to speak over you and he's way more vocal than you are. And he's the kind
Well,
of person who tries to, and I'm doing this right now, but he's the kind of person who tries to speak all the time and not let you present your argument. But do you think you would have handled the situation differently from Tone Base? Or do you have
Yeah, I
this
mean,
something different?
well, so what happened that a lot of people don't know is that he put a camera to my face right before we went on stage, right? Like 15 minutes before, he like came in with him and his crew. There were like 10 of them, and they just sort of ambushed me and tried to have an interview right there, right before we were going on stage. So I was like, what the hell? And he's done this to a lot of people where he will go in with a camera and he will totally sea lion and be like, I'm being very polite. I don't know why you're being rude. I'm just here trying to talk about blah blah blah. And it's extremely irritating. And I was already pretty irritated when I was on stage. And I told the organizers specifically, I want one mic so that we don't have to, so he can't just like speak over me, exactly like what you're saying. Instead, the organizers screwed up and they gave him a second mic. So I went off stage, tried to figure out what the hell happened. Why does he have his own mic? I wanted one mic so that he wouldn't be able to speak over me. So I mean, that ended up being like the big news. And it wasn't at all about the actual argument, which is very typical of any debates with Roger. He doesn't really want to engage at the idea level. Instead, he wants to engage at sort of the personality level. Because I wanted to keep the conversation at the idea level, and he had no interest in doing that. Instead, it was just sort of like, gotcha. Hey, have you read all of Keynes's General Theory of Money and Credit or something like that? It's idiotic. That's an appeal to authority. It's not about the actual idea. It is about discrediting the other person. And this is something that I'm realizing about him, is that, that's how he operates. That's what that's more important to him, is control over a particular thing rather than bringing self-sovereignty to the world, or allowing people to control their own money. It's all about him, right? Like that's what that whole argument, that whole debate was about. It wasn't about the merits of Bitcoin Cash, or any of the actual economic theories. It was about him. And he even said during his debate later on with Tone that he's the one that made Bitcoin popular, and that he was going to do the same with Bitcoin Cash. It's the mindset of somebody that thinks he's sort of like the reason for something, rather than the actual design of the idea. So to me, it was an educational experience. I wouldn't say I would ever do it again. But it was very educational, and it helped me to learn what it was that he was thinking, and what a lot of the Bitcoin Cash people that were there, where they were coming from. It's much more about controlling the narrative and like attacking people rather than engaging at the level of ideas, and that's kind of really sad in my view.
I think Roger Ver is a politician at core. He tried to run for office when he was younger. And he has used so many tactics, which you can find in even the ancient debate books, like rhetorics. He just tries to make you small, and he takes the ball in his field all the time. I watched the debate which he had with Charlie Lee of Litecoin, and he was trying all the time, whenever he was feeling insecure about the topic, he would insult the other person in one way or another, and then ask questions like, are you a Marxist? Did you read Das Kapital by Karl Marx? Because I read it from cover to cover and I know all about it. And if you agree that Bitcoin has intrinsic value because it's being mined and there are mining costs, then you're a socialist.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what people like him do, and he's not even doing it well. He's just doing it kind of badly. I don't really. I came into the debate, or I came to that cruise, never having actually met the guy, and after having met him, my opinion of him completely changed, because I thought he was sort of like a naive idealist that didn't really understand what was going on. Turns out that's not the case. It's very much somebody that wants to control things, and this is his way of controlling things. He has the backing of certain people in Bitcoin Cash, so he feels like he has more of a voice there. There's a man that just wants influence. Like you said, he's a politician. He doesn't really care about, like helping the world or whatever, or even engaging at that level of ideas. It is all about power for him, and that was really disappointing. I mean, he's done some really good things for Bitcoin, and I applaud him for that. And I said that at the very beginning of my speech. But like, to see him like this is just like so blatant and so obvious and so sad. It actually, yeah, it was very disappointing. Let's just put it.
I've lost you for a second, but you said, let's just put it, and I think you said this way after that, or that way.
Yeah. Let's just say that that whole experience was disappointing. And yeah, let's leave it at that.
I think I would love to talk to him someday, or maybe interview him, because I would know what he's doing all the time.
Mhm.
And maybe I would just be like, John Carvalho, or how do you pronounce his name?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
Bitcoin
take
error
that
log.
nihilistic approach to whatever he's saying and demolish his arguments in a very calm way, because that's what
Mm.
he's trying. He's trying to piss you off. He's trying to get you to that boiling point where you just give up or you try to attack him personally. And
Mhm.
once he takes you away from the reasonable argument,
Mhm.
makes you be less rational than you wanted to be, that's when he wins. Because he comes out as
Yeah.
very confident, but he's passive aggressive. He's
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm being so nice right here. I'm trying to have a civil debate
Well,
with you,
yeah,
but
that's
not
what sea lioning is. That's what he was totally doing. Was, oh, I'm being civil, therefore I win. And this is like so common in any sort of political discourse, which is why I avoid anything politics related like that. I'm interested in the tech. I'm interested in talking about the economics. I'm not interested in people or who said what. This I don't pay attention to what Kim Kardashian is doing. I don't care, right? I care about the ideas. I care about like how the incentive structures. I care about the actual technology, and he has zero interest in engaging in any of that. Instead, he wants to talk about what books he's read or what books somebody else hasn't read. It's the stupidest form of debate ever. But unfortunately, that's what politics tends to degenerate to, because it's one person, one vote instead of $1 one vote. I think a $1 one vote is way more effective because people are much more careful about how they vote with their money. All evidence so far has been that Bitcoin is a big winner. Bitcoin is the one that people trust. Bitcoin is the actual store of value. He's trying to turn it into something else. He's trying to basically, by force of will, force other people to do his bidding, but it's not going to work. There isn't some central place that you can control. Well, there is in Bitcoin Cash, but not in Bitcoin. And you can't browbeat people into believing whatever it is that you want them to believe. That's coercion. That's wrong, and it's against everything that libertarianism stands for, despite the fact that he claims to be libertarian. So I find him very. I don't know. He purposefully tries to agitate and do all the demagoguery and stuff like that. I just find that very distasteful. And I think this community is too smart to fall for any of that. And the people that he does manage to manipulate, I'm glad that they're at Bitcoin Cash and not in Bitcoin.
I guess that's a fair point.
Hmm.
I have some questions from JF, who is the boss, the big one who finances this project. And he has been mining for over 7 or 8 years in Canada.
Mm.
And he wants to know what are the main challenges of Bitcoin and if we are still scared of 51% attacks or over centralization of mining, or if you think Bitcoin will ever switch to proof of stake.
Yeah, I would be completely against any sort of attempts to move to proof of stake. It's not secure. Like the fact that it costs a lot of money to mine a block is a feature, not a bug. That means that it is that much more difficult to roll it back. Um, and it's directly proportional. You can't, if it takes very little effort to produce the block, then it takes very little effort to roll it back. So proof of stake doesn't really do anything because it doesn't really require energy or effort to do. So, I mean, proof of stake makes zero sense. Now, is there, one manufacturer that's producing a lot of mining equipment? Yeah, it's been true for a few years, but I mean, I'm not worried about it. I've looked at the game theory. Um, the only people that can really affect Bitcoin with like a 51% attack would be some sort of state level actor. And I don't think they're coordinated enough to try. If you're a business and you have like 51% of the hash power, it would be absolutely ludicrous for you to try to attack the network with that much hashing power. In fact, you would try very hard to make it look like there's like 3 different pools or something like that. Which arguably Bitmain is doing, but you would not attack the network. And the reason is because it's not in your economic interest to do so. If you did that, then all of your value would go down. Like it's mutually assured destruction. It doesn't make any sense. So like mining centralization is already becoming more diffuse. We know that there's a ton of other miners that are getting into the space. It takes like 6 to 12 months before you can have equipment that can actually work on the network. We know that Bitmain is losing market share. We know that there's a lot of different people mining. So I don't think it's a problem, and it's more decentralized than anything else we've ever tried. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, a lot of people that like worry about this sort of thing tend to think of the worst case scenario, but the worst case scenario can only come to fruition if there's some incentive there for somebody to do it. It's possible, for example, for me to drive and crash into everybody on the road. But most people don't do that, right? Like that's not like I have the freedom to go and drive, but I don't like swerve into everybody that I see and just completely destroy, like the traffic flow and everything else. That's not something that I do. And that's because the incentives are there for me to not do that, right? Like if I crash into somebody, I hurt myself. So that's the way I see a lot of these conversations. It's people worrying about some lunatic that's going to crash into everybody and cause like a 30-car pileup on purpose. I think it's an overblown issue.
What do you think about Nouriel Roubini? He tried to be very vocal in the last week, and he even tweeted to some major figures like Vitalik Buterin. And I actually managed to trigger him with an article in which I said that he's turning into a Bitcoin maximalist.
He kind of is. I love that quote where he said, like shitcoin is like a derogatory term for shit because shit's actually really, really useful, whereas all these other coins are not. And I was like, yeah, that's actually kind of true. It's an insult to manure. A lot of what he says is very Keynesian. He doesn't know anything about economics. The guy's an idiot. And unfortunately, we have a lot of idiots that have eminent positions, mostly because they're supported by the state. And the state will give you a prominent position if you give them justification for taking more of your freedom away and getting to control you. So that's just reality. I hear this guy is like has been like if you look at his tweets from like 5 years ago or something like that, he's been railing against Bitcoin since it was like $50 and saying, oh, see, I was right, it came down 20%. And he says that every time it comes down 20%. This guy has no credibility. If you make a prediction, stick to it, and if you're right, then you'll get some credit. If you're not, then you don't actually know anything. This is the same thing like the Paul Krugmans of the world do, is just predict, just crow about something when it goes down, but not say anything when it's going up or whatever. It's idiotic.
Yeah. I mean, I guess when he predicted the crash of the housing market in 2008, but he did
Mm-hmm.
that like a few years before, he
Mm-hmm.
had more data to support his claims. Right now, he's just speculating. He says, "Oh, this decentralization is bullshit," and I've met Jihan Wu, and he bragged about owning so much of the hashing power that he can attack it. He can attack both Bitcoin and Ethereum. And he had this testimony. I'm not sure if you watched the video or read the document which he presented, which was largely misinformed in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that he didn't even try to look beneath the surface. He just looked, there's this indicator which is called a Gini coefficient,
Mm-hmm.
which shows inequality. And he said that in Bitcoin, it's much worse than North Korea because there's a concentration with wallets which own too much. But he didn't actually mention that these wallets belong to exchanges. So he distorted the facts just to fit his narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's trying to make a name for himself in the community because right now he's getting a lot of coverage from other media outlets like CoinDesk and the Cointelegraph and CCN. They all write about him and he retweets whatever they write about him. He likes the attention that he's getting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. It's a big topic, and he wants to make the news or whatever. I mean, I don't really care about this guy. He's about as relevant as Jamie Dimon. I don't care.
That's fair. So I have two more questions, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, wait, which one should I pick? I've actually made a document on which everyone could add a question. Oh yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one. What kind of t-shirt do you want to see Roger Ver wear after he made that bet that he would wear whatever t-shirt is given to him if Lightning Network gets more than 1,000 merchants in 5 years or 3 years? I'm not sure. He made this bet
I,
with Charlie Lee during the cruise, the same one which
mm-hmm.
you were on.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this debate. And at the end, just like he made a bet with Tone Vase and said,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, he claimed that
Well, I
Bitcoin.
mean, he offered me a bet, and then he squelched on it. He just like ran off, and said, "I don't want to do this bet." I mean, the guy doesn't really have any integrity, so I don't really care. And he's going to be given a shirt, and he's not going to wear it, or he's going to find some excuse or whatever. As far as I can tell, he's not good on his word. So, I mean, I don't care what he wears. If he wants to wear a shirt that says "I'm an idiot" or something like that, or I mean, I guess that might be more appropriate. But yeah, I don't really care. He just like he's doing all this stuff for publicity, um, and for me, it doesn't really matter at all.
Okay. And the
Mm-hmm.
final question, I think I've started the series with this assumption that personalities in the Bitcoin space are a lot like rock stars. And you travel the world, go on tour, and present your latest songs which you wrote, which happen to be VIPs or whatever projects that you're working on.
Well, I'm a song, so
You're
I
a
guess.
song.
Oh yeah.
But what kind of rock star would you be, or do you actually make a parallel with some personality in music and say, I'm a lot like that guy in my field?
I actually don't listen to that much music. I mean, once in a while, I'll listen to classical just because it's the least distracting, and I can get to work, and it's kind of like a way to drown out the noise. Like when I'm in a cafe or something like that. Um, I actually think it's a healthy thing for Bitcoin to not have that many prominent personalities. Like, you look at like Twitter followers and stuff like that. Vitalik has way more followers than, say, Adam Back or Luke Dash Jr. or somebody else. And I think that's a very good thing. Because Vitalik is clearly the leader for Ethereum. Charlie is clearly the leader for Litecoin, and so on. And all of these people have a following that's based on that. I don't want Bitcoin to be a cult of personality, and like I think this is part of the perception that Roger had, which was that I represent core. I don't represent core. I represent me. That's it. Nobody represents core in a sense because it's a decentralized system. You don't have representatives of a decentralized system. And this is one of the most annoying things about the media is that, whenever there's some sort of like grassroots movement, they always want like a spokesperson, right? Somebody that they can go and put a mic in front of and say, okay, well, how do you justify doing that, that, and that? And they try to define their enemy that way. I think it's good for Bitcoin not to have that. And I'm flattered that you think I'm a rock star, and I'm flattered that you liken me to a personality in this thing. But it's not about me. I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be much more about bringing sound money to the world, and that changes absolutely everything. The more I study money, the more I'm convinced that all sorts of good things will come as a result of people having access to money that cannot be taken away from them, money that will continue to hold value. That to me is the most important thing for people to have in the world. And once we have that, then we unleash the creativity and entrepreneurship and ingenuity of billions of people. How long that takes, I don't know, but that's the vision that I have for this community. And honestly, I would be happy not like having to do all of that. If it came tomorrow, I would gladly disappear. And if somebody gave me the option of, you can disappear and nobody would know where you went and stuff like that, I would take Satoshi's lead and go and do that the next day. As long as I get that, which would help the world tremendously, I don't really care about, like my quote unquote fame or whatever. I don't really, it's not what I'm really seeking. Does that make sense?
Honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to end this. That was inspirational.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stop the recording. Okay, I wanted to tell you a joke at first, but I missed the opportunity and I didn't want to tell it afterwards. But I remember when Blakely sent you a tweet and said, would you like to do this interview? We actually tried to make this short conversation, which basically said that he'll give you recipes for barbecue because he's from Tennessee and stuff like that. And he actually passed you on to the only vegetarian in the group to have the interview with. So I'm sorry.
That's funny. That's funny. We could talk about vegetarianism sometime. It's. I was a vegetarian for like 20 years, so
Really?
it's another interesting topic.
I've been for 1 year.
Yeah, I was from I think like 16 to 36, something like that. The last 6 years have been more carnivory-ish paleo diet for me, but it took a long time. But I realized that it's not meat that's the problem, at least from a health standpoint. It's much more the sugar, the processed food, even fruit, and I'd hate to say it, but vegetables. They're the bad things, not meat.
Okay.
Anyway, you're still recording. At some point we can.
Am I?
Yeah, it says recording.
Oh, I stopped the video, not the recording. Wait.
Yeah, that's right.